Welcome to the Brain Alpha. Let's talk about why the typical American hustle culture and that whole idea of raw willpower almost always fail to create lasting life changes. You know the drill. We're constantly told to just grind harder, push through the pain, and white-knuckle our way to success. But if you've ever actually tried to force a new habit or pivot your life direction purely through sheer willpower, you know it rarely lasts. Why? Because you're literally fighting against your own biology. Today, in this explainer, we're going to look at the fascinating neuroscience of self-coaching and how you can completely rewire your internal operating system. Okay, let's dive right into this. Think about it. Over 90% of our daily actions are completely unconscious. That means you aren't actually making choices most of the time. You're just running on an automatic conveyor belt. You might think you're consciously deciding what to do from the second you wake up until you hit the pillow, but the reality is kind of staggering. Your brain is mostly just playing back pre-recorded, habitual patterns based on your past experiences. You are essentially on autopilot. So when you try to use that tiny 10% of conscious willpower to override the massive 90% of unconscious programming, well, it's like trying to stop a freight train with a bicycle. No way that works, right? So, the absolutely crucial point here is that your brain's #1 job is not to make you rich or successful or even happy. It is simply to maintain the status quo and keep you safe by avoiding any painful changes. Whenever you try to step out of your comfort zone, your brain instantly flashes red warning lights. It pulls up every memory of past failures, embarrassment, and fear, totally tricking you into thinking that changing your habits is a literal threat to your survival. It just whispers, hey, let's just stay here where it's safe. And look, if you don't understand this hidden brake system, you're just going to spin your wheels forever. To figure out how to hack this, we really need to look at the childhood of educator John Moldun. He grew up in deep poverty, but was forced to sit in a rain-battered car while his dad relentlessly played overwhelmingly positive self-help tapes. Just picture the scene for a second. The family is struggling, there's immense stress, his parents are fighting over money, and the whole atmosphere is just bleak. Yet the second they get into their beat-up car, his father blasts these audio tapes telling them they have infinite potential, that they're destined for greatness, and that success is basically guaranteed. Now, young John was furious. He honestly thought his dad was completely delusional. But looking back as an adult, John realized something profound. His father wasn't ignoring reality. He was acting as a gatekeeper, fiercely protecting his family's brain inputs from the despair surrounding them. At 11 years old, John absolutely hated those tapes. It felt like a massive disconnect from their harsh reality. But his father was actively managing the literal one thing he could control, which was what went into their minds. He flat out refused to let the bleakness of their situation become their default internal programming. Fast forward to John's high school years. He was an isolated, failing student until a teacher intentionally insulted and provoked him. This teacher used negative psychology to trigger John's anger and essentially drive him to get top grades. John was at rock bottom, friendless, on the verge of dropping out. Instead of nurturing him, a teacher looked him dead in the eye and essentially told him he was worthless and would never amount to anything. And man, this sparked a massive inferno of anger in John. He decided right then and there to prove that teacher wrong. He took that pure, unadulterated rage, channeled it into his studies, and rocketed straight to the top of his class. But here is the catch. Even though he became a top student, John felt this deep, agonizing frustration because he realized he had been completely manipulated like a puppet by someone else's inputs. Sure, he had the grades, but the victory tasted like ash. He hadn't changed because he wanted to. He changed because a teacher had expertly pushed his buttons. He realized that his anger and the success that followed were just automatic reactions to an external stimulus. He wasn't the master of his own destiny. He was just a machine reacting to someone else's code. And this perfectly illustrates an incredible epiphany John had years later while working in a toy store. Whether it's your dad's positive tapes or a teacher's insults, the brain is simply programmed by whatever information is fed into it. While stocking shelves, John actually saw a toy car that looked exactly like his dad's old vehicle. In a flash, all the pieces just connected. The tapes, the teacher's insults, his own reactions, it all came down to inputs and outputs. If you feed the brain anger, you get an angry reaction. If you feed it fear, you get paralysis. But if you intentionally feed it what you want, you can literally rewrite your life's code. It's a total game changer. Which brings us right to the concept of self-coaching. Now, this isn't just about cheering for yourself in the mirror. It's about consciously observing, filtering, and actively changing the input patterns fed to your own brain to dictate your own life outcomes. This is where we move from theory into incredible practical application. Self-coaching is about becoming the director of your own mind. It's refusing to let the news, your past trauma, or negative people dictate the information your brain processes. You grab the steering wheel and finally take over that 90% of autopilot programming. So what's really interesting here is John's exact actionable morning routine. You can use these steps to rewrite your brain's default programming. Let's break down exactly how you can implement this in your own life, literally starting tomorrow morning. These aren't just feel-good platitudes, guys. These are precise psychological tools designed to bypass the brain's defense mechanisms. John has used these exact steps for decades to go from a struggling, angry kid to a highly successful educator. Step 1 is asking yourself a vital question every single morning. Who are you coaching today? It's about recognizing that before you can effectively lead a team or a family, you absolutely must put yourself as your very first client. When you look in the mirror, you have to realize that you are the most important person you will manage today. We spend so much time and energy trying to fix others, guide our kids, or manage our coworkers, but we completely neglect our own mental state. By declaring yourself your own VIP client, you establish that baseline respect and attention required to actually change your internal programming. Step 2 is radical gratitude. This means doing the exact opposite of fighting your fear. You actually thank your brain for generating negative, anxious thoughts. I know, this sounds completely counterintuitive. Normally, when we feel anxious about a new project or a big life change, we try to suppress it, right? We say, stop being weak, stop worrying. But your brain is really just doing its job. It's trying to keep you safe from perceived danger based on past hurts. By fighting it, you just create more friction. By thinking it, you instantly disarm the panic. You kind of have to personify your anxiety as an overprotective bodyguard and gently tell it, thank you for trying to keep me safe from past hurts, but I've grown up now and I don't need this much protection anymore. Think of it like a huge, intimidating bodyguard who totally means well but won't let you leave the house because you might trip and fall. Instead of wrestling with the guy, you just pat him on the back, you acknowledge his hard work, you tell him that you see his effort, but you've got this handled now. This simple act of surrender and acceptance allows your brain to relax its defenses and open up to new, positive actions. Step 3 is changing your vocabulary. Instead of calling yourself a failure, you must view yourself as a software program in beta, constantly updating and learning. Notice the massive difference in the input here. When you say, I am terrible at this, you are giving your brain a definitive, permanent command, and your brain accepts it as a hard-coded fact. But when you switch your input to, I am currently learning this, you signal to your brain that the current state is temporary and growth is underway. You aren't a defective product. You're just downloading the newest update. Ask yourself right now, when you make a mistake in life, do you want to be the internal coach who screams at a failing player or the one who calmly asks what can be learned? We all know which coach gets better results on the field. The coach who screams creates a culture of fear, hesitation, and ultimate failure. The coach who teaches builds resilience, confidence, and victory. Yet, so many of us choose to be that screaming coach inside our own heads. Honestly, it's time to fire that toxic coach and hire the teacher. When you stop fighting your brain with brute force willpower and start treating it like a VIP client with respect and intentional inputs, it literally transforms into an unstoppable super machine working for your goals. The neuroscience is absolutely clear on this. You cannot hate yourself into a version of yourself that you love. By filtering your inputs, showing radical gratitude to your defense mechanisms, and shifting your internal vocabulary, you finally align your conscious desires with your incredible unconscious processing power. So as you start your day tomorrow, ask yourself, who is really programming your autopilot today? Are you the driver or just the passenger? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and help us build the hype. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.